The professor said no species could survive 1G gravity. The human in the back asked, "Then why am I still standing?" So, there I was, sitting in Advanced Xenobiology 401, minding my own business, taking notes on my datapad like a good little student. The lecture hall smelled like recycled air, and the faint tang of whatever cleaning solution the maintenance bots used on the floors. Nothing unusual, just another standard rotation at the Galactic Institute of Universal Sciences. Professor Kelvin, a Theraxian with scales that shimmered between purple and green depending on his mood, currently a confident violet, stood at the front of the amphitheater. He was wrapping up his segment on planetary habitability zones. Real thrilling stuff, the kind that makes you question your life choices at 3 in the morning when you are cramming for exams. And so, Kelvin announced, his voice carrying that particular tone professors use when they think they are about to drop some profound wisdom on your head. We can conclusively state that no sentient species can possibly evolve on, or survive long-term exposure to, a planet with 1 standard gravity or higher. He tapped his podium for emphasis. The holographic display behind him showed a neat little chart with a red danger zone starting exactly at 1.0 G. I glanced at my notes, scribbled something about atmospheric composition, yawned. The usual. Then I heard it. A snort. Not a polite clearing of respiratory passages. An actual, honest to the void, human snort of laughter. My head swiveled, along with about 40 other alien heads towards the back corner of the lecture hall. There, sprawled in his seat like he owned the place, was the human exchange student. Name was Derek something. Derek Holloway? Yeah, that was it. He had joined our class maybe 2 cycles ago and mostly kept quiet. Until now. Sorry, Derek said, not sounding sorry at all. Did you just say 1G gravity is unsurvivable? The temperature in the room dropped about 3 degrees. You could have heard a dust particle hit the floor. Professor Kelvin's scales flickered towards an annoyed orange. Yes, Mr. Holloway, Kelvin said slowly, like he was addressing a particularly dim child. 1 standard gravity creates a force too extreme for biological tissue to withstand over extended periods. The skeletal structure would collapse. The cardiovascular system would fail. It is basic physics. Derek leaned back further in his chair, which creaked ominously under the movement. He had this grin on his face, the kind of grin that says someone is about to make your entire day significantly more complicated. Then how am I not crushed? Derek asked. Silence. Beautiful, awkward, crushing silence. Kelvin blinked. His inner eyelids flicked sideways across his eye surfaces. Once, twice. Excuse me, I said. Derek repeated, speaking slower now, mimicking Kelvin's earlier condescension in a way that made me wince internally. How am I not currently a flat pancake on this floor? Because, and I could be wrong here, but I am pretty sure Earth has 1.0 G, actually slightly less, but close enough for government work. Oh no. Oh, this was going to be good. Marlix, the Vendurian sitting 2 rows in front of me, let out a chittering laugh. His 4 arms waved dismissively. The human exaggerates. Clearly his world has 0.7, maybe 0.8 G at most. He simply rounds up for dramatic effect. Several other students made agreeing noises. Kelvin looked relieved, like he had been thrown a lifeline. Indeed, the professor said, his scales shifting back towards confident purple. Mr. Holloway, while I appreciate your attempt at classroom participation, perhaps you have misunderstood your own planet's specifications. It is a common error among species new to galactic standard measurements. Derek's grin got wider. This was not a good sign. I had seen humans smile like that before. It never ended well for whoever was on the receiving end. Professor Kelvin, Derek said, his tone dripping with poisonous politeness. Earth's gravity is 9.8 meters per second squared. That is 0.997 G on the galactic standard scale. We just call it 1G because, it is easier and we are not pedantic about the decimal points. Impossible, Kelvin stated flatly. And yet, Derek spread his hands. Here I sit, not crushed, not collapsed. Actually pretty comfortable if I am being honest, though these chairs could use better lumbar support. Tessa, a Quilnari exchange student with bioluminescent spots that pulsed when she was stressed. They were pulsing now, raised a tentacle hesitantly. Perhaps the human has undergone extensive genetic modification, or uses some form of constant gravitational dampening field. Nope, Derek said cheerfully. Standard issue human, factory settings, no modifications, no dampening field, just bones and meat and whatever else evolution threw together over a few million years. Kelvin's scales were doing something I had never seen before. They could not seem to decide between colors, flickering rapidly through the entire spectrum. It was actually kind of mesmerizing. Mr. Holloway, Kelvin said, his voice tight with barely controlled frustration. What you are suggesting contradicts several fundamental principles of xenobiology. The compression force alone would what? Derek interrupted. Because I have been living in it my entire life. So have roughly 10 billion other humans. We seem to be managing okay. Hell, we even have athletes who do backflips and stuff. For fun. The lecture hall erupted. Everyone started talking at once. Voices overlapping in a dozen different languages and frequency ranges. And me. I just sat there watching this absolute disaster unfold, thinking one very clear thought. This semester just got way more interesting than I had signed up for. Professor Kelvin held up his primary appendage, calling for silence. The chatter died down to a low murmur, then nothing. His scales had settled on a determined shade of amber, which I recognized as his lecturing color, the one he used when he was about to dig in his heels and defend a position until the heat death of the universe. Mr. Holloway, he began, his tone carefully measured. What you fail to understand is the cumulative effect of gravitational stress. Perhaps your species has evolved a temporary tolerance, but the long-term consequences would be catastrophic. Bone density degradation, organ prolapse, circulatory collapse. These are not theoretical concerns. They are biological certainties. Derek nodded along like he was actually considering this. Okay, so, quick question. How long is long-term? Over the course of several solar cycles the damage would become irreversible, Kelvin explained, warming to his topic. The holographic display behind him shifted to show a diagram of a generic skeletal system crumbling under pressure. Very dramatic. The constant downward force would compress the spinal column, reduce lung capacity and eventually lead to complete systemic failure. Right, Derek said. So humans have been on Earth for about 300,000 years, give or take. When exactly does this systemic failure kick in? Kelvin's scales flickered. Just for a moment. Ratch, a scorpion whose exoskeleton made clicking sounds when he moved, spoke up from the middle row. The human misunderstands basic physics. 1G is not merely uncomfortable, it is lethal. My own world has 0.4G, and even that requires significant physiological adaptations, thick carapace plating, redundant muscle groups, hydraulic joint systems. Exactly, Kelvin said, seizing on the support. The Scorpion example is perfect. 0.4G requires extensive evolutionary countermeasures. 1G would demand adaptations so extreme that the creature would barely be recognizable as a sentient being, more machine than organic life. Derek raised his hand. Actually raised it like this was primary school. Can I ask what I look like to you, Professor? You appear to be a standard bipedal carbon-based life form, Kelvin replied carefully. No hydraulic joints? Not that are visible, no. No thick armor plating. Your skin appears relatively thin, actually. And yet, Derek stood up, stretching his arms over his head, joints popping audibly, still not crushed. Weird, right? Lissa, a phrenic who normally never spoke in class, her vocal membranes vibrating nervously, offered her perspective. Perhaps Earth's 1G measurement is calculated differently. Our scanning methods might not translate properly to human systems. Measurement error could account for the discrepancy. That is a reasonable hypothesis, Kelvin said quickly. Too quickly. Conversion errors between species are well documented. Mr. Holloway's Earth might read as 1G on their primitive instruments, but actual galactic standard measurement would likely reveal. The Galactic Institute measured Earth's gravity when they first contacted us, Derek interrupted, pulling out his datapad. I have got the report right here. Want me to read the relevant section? The lecture hall went quiet again. That will not be necessary, Kelvin said stiffly. It says, and I quote. Derek read anyway, because of course he did. Planetary surface gravity measures at 9.807 meters per second squared, consistent with 1.00 G galactic standard. Atmospheric composition breathable for class 5 species. Surface water abundant. Really nice place actually, apart from the gravity thing. Marlix's forearms crossed over his thorax. The human could be an anomaly. One genetic outlier does not disprove the professor's thesis. Perhaps you, specifically, have some rare mutation that allows temporary survival. Could be, Derek agreed amiably. Except I am really not special. Like at all. Pretty average human actually. Bad at sports. Cannot sing. Barely passed my pilot certification exam. Twice. Then how? Tessa started. How do I do it? Derek finished for her. That is kind of my question too, because according to the professor, I should not exist. But here I am, existing pretty hard, breathing, walking around, even managed to climb the stairs to get here this morning, which if 1G is unsurvivable should have been absolutely impossible. Professor Kelvin's scales had gone completely gray. I had never seen that color on him before. Did not know what it meant. Nothing good. Probably, there must be some explanation, he muttered, more to himself than to the class. Some factor we have not accounted for, perhaps a personal shielding device. Microscopic gravitational compensators, or Derek said quietly, that grin still plastered on his face. Maybe your theory is wrong. The words hung in the air like a physical thing. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Or whatever the equivalent was for species that did not breathe. Professor Kelvin stared at Derek Holloway for a long, uncomfortable moment. Then he said the words that sealed all our fates. Let us test that hypothesis, shall we? The lecture hall exploded into chaos again. This time nobody was waiting for permission to speak. Everyone had an opinion, and they were all sharing it at maximum volume, a practical test. Finally, this should be entertaining. Someone record this. I want evidence when the human taps out. Do we have medical staff on standby? Professor Kelvin raised both appendages, calling for order. His scales had shifted to a determined crimson. Battle mode, if I had to guess. Class, please, settle down. We will proceed in an orderly fashion. Derek was still standing in the back row, looking completely unbothered by the sudden turn towards public humiliation. If anything, he seemed more relaxed. Dangerous trait in a human, I was learning. The Institute has a variable gravity training facility, Kelvin announced, located in sub-level 7. We use it primarily for preparing students who plan to visit high-gravity worlds. With proper supervision and safety equipment, we can safely test Mr. Holloway's claims. Safety equipment? Derek asked. Like what? Exoskeletal support frames, compression suits, gravitational dampening harnesses, standard gear for anyone attempting to operate in environments above 0.6 G, Kelvin explained. They are rated up to 0.9 G, though I have never seen anyone actually push that limit. Cool, Derek said. Do I get one? Kelvin's smile was not kind. That depends, Mr. Holloway. Are you claiming you need one? Oh, that sneaky scaled jerk. He was backing Derek into a corner. Either admit he needed help contradicting his entire argument, or refuse the safety gear and potentially get himself hurt. Classic academic trap. Derek just shrugged. I mean, I have been doing fine without one so far, but if you think I need it, Professor, I will defer to your expertise. I think, Kelvin said slowly, that we should establish a baseline first. You claim Earth has 1G. Let us see how you perform at 0.7, then 0.8. We will work our way up gradually. For safety purposes, naturally. Naturally, Derek agreed. Marlix was practically vibrating with excitement. This is going to be incredible. I have never seen someone actually fail in the gravity chamber before. They usually tap out during the safety briefing. Maybe he will make it to 0.6 before collapsing. Ratch clicked. I would respect that, honestly. 0.6 is nothing to dismiss. Lys's bioluminescent spots pulsed rapidly. Should we be encouraging this? What if he gets hurt? The human volunteered. Tessa pointed out. Besides, he seems confident. Overconfident, probably. But still, overconfidence is just inexperience wearing a fancy hat. I muttered under my breath. Nobody heard me. They were too busy gathering their things, chattering about what they expected to see. Professor Kelvin was already heading towards the door. Everyone who wishes to observe should proceed to sub-level 7. Those who have other commitments are dismissed. We will resume normal curriculum next session, assuming Mr. Holloway is still capable of attending. That last part was definitely a jab, Derek noticed, judging by his expression, but he did not take the bait, just grabbed his bag and started down the stairs. The entire class followed, all 42 of us, even the ones who usually left early. Nobody wanted to miss this. We filed out of the lecture hall in a stream of excited conversation and speculation. I heard someone setting up a betting pool. Odds were currently running 5-1 that Derek would not make it past 0.75, 10-1 that he would require medical attention, and some optimistic fool was offering 20-1 that he would actually reach 0.9. Nobody, I noticed, was betting on him reaching 1 full G. Derek walked in the middle of the pack, completely calm, hands in his pockets, whistling some tune I did not recognize, like he was heading to lunch, not towards a demonstration that would either validate his entire species or humiliate him in front of everyone. I caught up to him in the corridor. You know you do not have to do this, right? You could just let it go. Nobody would think less of you. He looked at me, that persistent grin still in place. Where would be the fun in that? Yeah, that is what I was afraid of. Sub-level 7 was colder than the rest of the institute. Something about temperature regulation in the gravity chambers. The air had a metallic taste, and the lighting was that harsh blue-white that made everyone look slightly ill. Perfect ambiance for what was about to happen. The training facility consisted of 3 main chambers, each surrounded by observation galleries with reinforced transparent aluminum. The largest chamber could apparently simulate up to 1.2 G, though the warning label suggested that was for equipment testing only, not biological use. Equipment testing. Right, because who in their right mind would actually subject living tissue to that kind of punishment? Professor Kelvin was already inside the control room when we arrived, speaking with the facility supervisor, a Krell named Vex, who had more scars than I could count. Vex glanced through the observation window at Derek, then back at Kelvin, then at Derek again. He said something I could not hear through the soundproofing, but his body language screamed skepticism. Attention, students. Kelvin's voice crackled through the speaker system. Please proceed to the equipment room. Anyone wishing to join Mr. Holloway in the chamber will need to suit up appropriately. Full safety protocols are in effect. That caused a stir. Join him? About half the class started backing away immediately. The other half, the ones who were either braver or stupider, headed for the equipment room with determined expressions. I went with the stupid half. Call it scientific curiosity, or morbid fascination. Same thing. Really, the equipment room looked like something between a medical facility and a military armory. Rows of support frames hung on the walls, all gleaming metal and pneumatic joints. Compression suits lined another wall, organized by species compatibility. Dampening harnesses, looking like strange torture devices, occupied a third section. Ratch immediately grabbed a Scorpion-compatible frame, his carapace clicking as he maneuvered into it. Marlix needed help getting all 4 arms into his compression suit. Tessa's dampening harness required 3 assistants and about 10 minutes of adjustment. Derek walked past all of it, stopped at a locker, pulled out a water bottle, took a drink, put it back, closed the locker. Holloway, Marlix called out, his voice slightly muffled by his helmet. The equipment is over here. Yeah, I saw it, Derek replied. Looks complicated. It is necessary for survival in elevated gravity, Ratch stated firmly. Unless you plan to watch from the observation deck. Nah, I am good. Derek stretched his arms over his head again. More popping sounds. Did human joints always do that? Or was his particular model defective? This is what I wore to class. Figure it will work in the chamber too. He was wearing pants, a shirt, some kind of soft shoes that looked like they provided absolutely zero support. Standard civilian clothing. The kind of thing you would wear to buy groceries, not to test the absolute limits of biological tolerance. You cannot be serious, I said before I could stop myself. Derek looked at me. Why not? Because you will be exposed to potentially lethal gravitational forces wearing nothing but fabric and optimism. I mean, I am also wearing socks, he pointed out helpfully. Pretty good ones too. Got them on sale. Tessa's bioluminescent spots were going absolutely haywire. This is insane. Professor Kelvin, the human is not properly equipped. Kelvin's voice came through the speaker, and I swear I could hear the smile in it. Mr. Holloway has declined the safety equipment. That is his choice. We will of course monitor his vital signs closely and terminate the experiment immediately if he shows signs of distress. You mean when he shows signs of distress, Marlix muttered. 5 minutes later we were all inside the chamber. It was bigger than it looked from the outside, roughly 20 meters across, with a padded floor and handrails along the walls. The ceiling was covered in sensor arrays and gravitational emitters that hummed with barely contained power. My support frame whirred softly as it compensated for my movements. Already I could feel the slight increase in pressure. We were still at standard 0.4 G, and the frame was distributing the load across my skeletal structure. Without it, I would have felt like I was carrying an extra 50 kilograms. Beginning test sequence, Vex announced from the control room. Starting at 0.5 G. Increase will occur in 0.1 increments every 2 minutes. Participants should exit immediately if they experience pain, dizziness, respiratory distress, or any unusual symptoms. The hum increased. Just slightly. The pressure built. My frame adjusted. Servos whining. I felt heavier. Not unbearable, but definitely noticeable. Derek was standing in the center of the chamber, hands still in his pockets, looking around at the ceiling with mild interest. 0.6 G, Vex called out. Now it was getting serious. I felt my breathing become labored despite the frame's assistance. Ratch had moved to the wall, using the handrail for support. Marlix's forearms were braced against his knees. Derek shifted his weight from one foot to the other. Casual, like he was waiting for a transport. "How are you doing this?" Tessa gasped. Her dampening harness was glowing with the effort of keeping her upright. "Doing what?" Derek asked. "Not collapsing." "Oh." He considered this. "I guess I am just standing here. Not really doing anything special." .7G, Vex announced. He sounded surprised, like he had not expected to get this far. Two students immediately stumbled towards the exit. Their frames were literally dragging them to the door, safety protocols overriding manual control. A third followed, his breathing ragged even through his suit's supplemental oxygen. The pressure was immense now. Every movement felt like pushing through concrete. My frame was maxing out its compensation ability. Warning lights blinked on my peripheral display, and Derek Holloway, standing there in his sail socks and civilian clothes, looked perfectly comfortable. No, not comfortable. Bored. "Can we speed this up?" he asked. "I have got a paper due tomorrow and I really should start on it." Professor Kelvin's scales, visible through the observation window, had gone completely white. That was a new color. I really needed to learn what that one meant. Probably nothing good. .75G, Vex announced, and his voice cracked slightly on the number. Marlix went down. Not collapsed. Exactly. But his forearms gave out and he dropped to his knees with a heavy thud that I felt through the floor. His compression suit screamed alerts. The frame on his back sparked once, twice. Then emergency protocols kicked in and started dragging him towards the exit. "I am out," he wheezed. "No shame. No shame in this. That is impossible." 4 more students followed him. They did not even wait for their frames to make the decision. Just turned and hauled themselves to the door, moving like they were trudging through mud. That left 6 of us. 6 plus Derek. I was on my knees now too. My frame was making sounds I had never heard before. Grinding, protesting sounds. The kind of sounds that suggested expensive repairs in my immediate future. Every breath took conscious effort. My vision was starting to tunnel slightly around the edges. Ratch was flat on his carapace, limbs spread out, somehow still conscious. "The human," he clicked weakly, "is not normal." "Thanks," Derek said cheerfully. He had walked over to the wall. For a moment I thought he was finally going to use the handrail, finally going to show some sign that the gravity was affecting him. Instead, he put his hands on the floor. His feet went up. He was balanced on his hands upside down in .75G. "What are you doing?" I managed to gasp out. "Handstand," Derek replied. His voice was not even strained. "Been a while since I practiced. Figured I would give it a shot." "You are vertical," Tessa wheezed from somewhere behind me. "Voluntarily vertical. In .75G. "Yeah, is that weird?" "Yes." .8G. Vex called out. His voice had gone flat, monotone. The voice of someone whose understanding of reality was actively being dismantled. I fell forward, just completely face-planted into the padding. My frame gave up entirely. Safety override screaming and started the emergency extraction, dragging me towards the exit, whether I wanted to go or not. Honestly, I was grateful. The pressure was crushing, like someone had parked a small transport on my thorax. Through my fading vision, I saw Derek lower himself back to his feet, stand up normally, brush his hands off on his pants. Then he started doing jumping jacks. "Mr. Holloway," Professor Kelvin's voice came through the speakers, strained and high-pitched. "What in the name of the founders are you doing?" "Jumping jacks," Derek said between jumps. "It is a basic exercise. We do them in like elementary school. Good cardio. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ratch made a sound somewhere between a whimper and a prayer to his ancestral spirits. The last 4 students evacuated. Emergency extraction for all of them. Their frames had collectively decided that their occupants were in mortal danger and had taken matters into their own mechanical hands. The chamber was empty now except for Derek, still cheerfully counting his jump. 15, 16, 17. .85G, Vex whispered. Derek stopped his jumping jacks. Stood still for a moment. Professor Kelvin leaned forward in the control room, scales shifting rapidly through colors I had no names for. Then Derek dropped to the floor, on his stomach, hands beneath his shoulders, and started doing push-ups. "Oh, come on," someone muttered from the observation deck. Might have been me. Hard to tell. My frame had deposited me against the wall and I was fairly certain I was going into shock. "This is impossible," Kelvin said, not through the speaker system, just to himself. But the observation deck microphones picked it up anyway. The human cardiovascular system alone should be failing. The skeletal structure should be fracturing. He should not be capable of voluntary movement, let alone exercise. 1, 2, 3, Derek counted. His voice was slightly strained now. Finally, some sign that the gravity was actually affecting him. 4, 5, 6.9 G, Vex announced. He had given up on procedure entirely. Just stating numbers now. Bare facts. Reality. As impossible as it was proving to be. Derek finished his 10th push-up, stood up, rolled his shoulders. Okay, that one I can feel a bit. Like wearing a weighted vest. We use those for training sometimes. Training for what? Tessa asked weakly from her position on the observation deck floor. Sports, military prep, general fitness. You know, normal stuff. Normal stuff. He called .9 G weighted vest training. Normal stuff. Professor Kelvin was standing now, both appendages pressed against the observation window. His scales had gone through the entire spectrum and landed back on gray. That dead, empty gray. Mr. Holloway, we can stop here. You have made your point. Please exit the chamber before we risk permanent damage. Permanent damage to what? Derek asked. The equipment? Yeah, probably should not push it too hard. Do not want to break your facility. To you, Kelvin's voice cracked. Damage to you. Oh, Derek looked genuinely confused. Professor, I am fine. Honestly, this is only a bit heavier than home. Can we hit 1G? I am actually curious what that feels like in a controlled environment. The control room went silent. Every single being in the observation deck went silent. Even the equipment seemed to stop humming for a moment. Did he just say, Marlix whispered, his voice shaking, that this is only slightly heavier than home? Derek looked up at the observation deck, saw all of us staring at him in various states of horror and disbelief, and he smiled. That same dangerous smile from the lecture hall. Oh right. I guess we should probably talk about that. .95G, Vex said numbly. At this point I think he was just following protocol because his brain had completely checked out of reality. Derek stood in the center of the chamber, rotating his shoulders like he was warming up. Not warming down. Warming up. Like the real exercise had not even started yet. So here is the thing, Derek began, his voice carrying clearly through the speakers. Earth does not have .7G. It does not have .8G. It has, as I mentioned earlier, 9.8 meters per second squared. That is 1G. Actually 1G. The gravity I have been living in since I was born. He paused, letting that sink in. Every single day of my life has been spent in this exact pressure. When I wake up, 1G. When I eat breakfast, 1G. When I go for a run, and I am running in 1G, which means I am doing cardio while experiencing this exact force. We play sports in it. We have babies in it. Those babies learn to walk in it, which is basically learning to defy this crushing force before they can even talk properly. Kelvin had sat down. Actually sat down on the floor of the control room. His scales were flickering so rapidly they looked almost white noise. The average human can carry about 20 to 40% of their body weight comfortably, Derek continued. In 1G, on top of already existing in 1G, so we are basically operating under 1.2 to 1.4 G of total force regularly. Construction workers, soldiers, athletes, they go higher, much higher. Stop, Professor Kelvin whispered. Please stop. Derek did not stop. Our bones are dense. Like really dense. Our muscles have slow twitch and fast twitch fibers specifically adapted for constant gravitational load. Our cardiovascular system pumps blood upwards, against 1G of force. Every single second we are alive. Our spine has these curves. See that distribute the weight. Our feet have arches that act like springs. We are basically biological tanks wrapped in skin. 1G, Vex said quietly. Standard gravity. The threshold we use as the maximum survivable limit. They live in it. They were born in it. 1G equivalent. I corrected weakly from my position against the wall. My frame had stopped trying to evacuate me, but I still could not move. He said .997. Close enough that the difference does not matter. Tessa's bioluminescent spots had gone completely dark. How many humans are there? About 10 billion last census, Derek said. Give or take a few 100 million. We are decent at breeding. Turns out when you live on a Deathworld, you get really good at making more of yourself to replace the ones who do not make it. Deathworld, Ratch repeated. He called his own planet a Deathworld. I mean, yeah. Derek shrugged. Compared to most places in the galaxy, Earth is pretty hardcore. 1G gravity, extreme weather patterns, Tectonic activity, aggressive wildlife, microbial life that actively tries to kill you. The works. And you evolved there, Kelvin said slowly. He had pulled himself back up to standing, but he looked decades older somehow. Your species spent millions of years adapting to conditions that we classify as uninhabitable. You did not just survive, you thrived. You became the dominant species on a planet that should have crushed you into extinction. Pretty much, Derek agreed. 1G, Vex said again. He seemed stuck on that point. Could not move past it. They want 1G. Can we try it? Derek asked. I mean, we are already at 0.95. What is another 0.05 between friends? Absolutely not, Kelvin shouted. This facility is rated to 1.2, but that is for equipment stress testing, not biological use. We have no idea what would happen if we actually ran it at full capacity with a living being inside. I mean, I know what would happen, Derek said. I would stand here feeling completely normal. Probably do some squats or something. The observation deck had filled with students and faculty. Word had spread. Someone had activated the recording systems. This was going to be in every xenobiology textbook for the next 100 cycles. The day everything changed, Professor Kelvin looked at Derek through the observation window. At this human standing casually in 0.95 G, not even breathing hard, asking politely if they could increase the force that was currently incapacitating the most advanced safety equipment the Institute owned. My entire curriculum, Kelvin said softly, is wrong. 40 years of research. Hundreds of published papers. The foundational principles of gravitational biology. All wrong. Not wrong, Derek offered generously. Just incomplete. You had not met humans yet. Had not met humans yet, Kelvin repeated. He laughed. It was not a happy sound. The most dangerous species in the galaxy, and they have been hiding in plain sight behind a gravity well we assumed was impossible to survive. And that right there was the moment it clicked for me. Humans were not just survivors of 1G. They were products of it, forged by it. Every system in their body built to overcome a force that would kill most galactic species, and we had just invited them into the wider galaxy. Welcomed them, given them access to our space stations, our colonies, our worlds where they would be operating at a fraction of their natural capacity, where everything would feel lighter, easier, weaker, where they would be essentially superhuman. Vex, I called out weakly. What is the gravity on the station? 0.38 G standard, he replied automatically. I did the math. Humans experienced their home environment as 1G. The station was 0.38 G. That meant humans here were operating at roughly 1/3 of their normal gravitational load. Every single human on the station was basically enhanced, stronger than they should be, faster than they should be, more durable than they should be. Not because of technology or genetic modification, just because they came from a planet where the fundamental force pressing down on reality was 3 times stronger than anywhere else most of us had ever been. We are so screwed, I muttered. Derek, still standing in the chamber, still perfectly fine, grinned up at the observation deck. So, he said, same time next week, I can bring some other humans. We could do a proper workout. It will be fun. Nobody answered. We were all too busy recalculating our entire understanding of what was possible, and wondering what else about humans we had gotten catastrophically wrong.